Story 1. I remember the exact moment everything stopped feeling normal, even though at the time I didn't fully understand why. It was the last day of 4th grade, the kind of day that's supposed to feel light and exciting, with kids laughing, teachers barely keeping control of the classrooms, and everyone already mentally on summer break. I had plans that afternoon with my friend Lucas, something we had been looking forward to for weeks, even though we weren't in the same class anymore. We had been friends since kindergarten, and this was supposed to be our way of celebrating the end of the school year. At dismissal, we lined up and were walked outside to the pickup area where parents crowded the parking lot. I stood there scanning faces, looking for Lucas's dad, expecting to see his familiar truck pull in. Instead, I heard someone call my name from behind me. When I turned, I saw a man walking toward me with a confident smile, like he knew exactly who I was. He introduced himself as Lucas's uncle and said he was picking us up because Lucas's dad got stuck at work. His tone was casual, almost rehearsed, and before I could really process anything, he pointed toward the parking lot and waved as if to signal everything was normal. I hesitated, but only briefly. I told my teacher I was being picked up and pointed to the man. She looked in his direction, saw him wave, and that was enough. That small moment of trust was all it took. As we walked through the crowd, I noticed how fast he moved, like he was in a hurry that didn't match the situation. He kept talking the entire time, asking me random questions, filling every second with noise. It felt strange, but I couldn't explain why. When we reached his car, a dark red hatchback, I finally asked where Lucas was. He answered without missing a beat, saying Lucas was already at his house waiting for us. That didn't sit right with me, but I didn't argue. I got in the back seat. The drive lasted longer than it should have. My house was only a few minutes from school, and this was clearly not the direction we usually went. The streets became unfamiliar, the house is different, and the feeling in my chest slowly shifted from confusion to something colder. I kept looking out the window, trying to recognize anything, but nothing looked familiar. When we finally stopped, the house didn't look unusual. That was the worst part. It looked completely normal, like any other place in the neighborhood. He led me inside, closed the door behind us, and I heard the unmistakable click of a lock. The inside of the house was dim, with all the curtains drawn, and the air felt still, like no one had been there for a while. I asked where Lucas was again, and this time his response came with a strange pause. He said Lucas was downstairs playing video games and told me to wait where I was. Then he disappeared into another room. I heard a door open, followed by footsteps descending into what I realized was a basement. That was when fear hit me in full. I went straight to the front door and tried to open it, but it wouldn't move. Panic started building fast, and my mind raced for something, anything, that could get me out of there. I moved into the kitchen and saw a phone mounted on the wall. My hands were shaking as I picked it up and dialed 911, whispering as quietly as I could that I had been taken and giving the address I saw near the door. I didn't hang up. I left the line open and hid the phone under a towel before rushing back to where I had been standing. I could already hear him coming back upstairs. He called my name and told me to come downstairs because Lucas was waiting. I didn't respond. After a moment, he came up, and I saw the change in his expression immediately. The friendly mask was gone. He walked toward me slowly, then suddenly grabbed my wrist with a grip that hurt and started pulling me toward the basement. I cried and begged to go home, and he told me he would let me go if I behaved. I didn't believe him, but I didn't have a choice. Halfway down the stairs, the door slammed shut behind me, and I heard it lock. The basement was empty, unfinished, with a cold concrete floor and a single light bulb casting a weak yellow glow. I sat there shaking, listening to every sound from upstairs, not knowing what he was doing or how long I had. Then after what felt like forever, I heard something that didn't belong to that house. Knocking. Loud, aggressive, repeated knocking. The police. Moments later, there was a crash, shouting, heavy footsteps, and the basement door swung open. An officer grabbed me and pulled me up the stairs and out of the house. Outside, everything was chaos. Flashing lights, multiple police cars, voices everywhere. I remember my mom arriving, crying uncontrollably, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. The man was taken away in handcuffs, and that was the last time I ever saw him. Later, I learned he had known Lucas's dad from work and had used that connection to plan everything. If I hadn't called for help when I did, I know I wouldn't have made it out. Story 2. By the time we reached junior year of high school, we thought we were smarter than we actually were. The last day of school felt like a free pass to do something reckless, something that would turn into a story we'd laugh about later. The original plan had been to go to the beach, but a heavy storm rolled in, turning the sky dark and flooding the streets with rain. Instead of canceling altogether, we came up with a different idea, one that felt even more exciting in the moment. There was an abandoned elementary school on the outskirts of town, a place everyone knew about but no one ever went near. It had been empty for years and was scheduled to be demolished soon. With the storm keeping everyone indoors, we convinced ourselves it was the perfect time to explore it. We drove there in my friend Marcus's car, parking behind the building where thick bushes and overgrown trees hid us from view. The place looked lifeless, with broken fences and dark windows staring back at us. Marcus grabbed a metal bat from his trunk and without much hesitation, smashed one of the classroom windows. The sound echoed louder than expected, even through the rain, and for a moment we all froze, listening for any sign that someone had heard it. When nothing happened, we climbed inside. The classroom felt like a time capsule. Desks were still lined up, papers scattered across the floor, faded decorations hanging on the walls. It was unsettling, like the place had been abandoned in a hurry and never touched again. As we moved through the hallways, our footsteps echoed loudly, and every sound seemed amplified by the emptiness of the building. At first, it felt like an adventure. Then we heard something, a noise from somewhere down the hall. It wasn't loud, but it was distinct enough to make all of us stop. One of us joked that it was just the building settling, but no one really believed it. When we heard it again, closer this time, the mood shifted completely. We turned off our flashlights and stood in silence, listening. The storm outside created a constant background noise, but beneath it, there was something else, something that didn't belong. As we moved further down the hallway, I glanced back and thought I saw a movement near one of the classroom doors, like something pulling back out of sight. I told the others, and we all pointed our lights in that direction, but there was nothing there. That was the moment we all silently agreed we weren't alone. We started moving faster, trying to distance ourselves from whatever was behind us. The building felt different now, less like an abandoned space and more like somewhere we didn't belong. Then came another sound, closer and more deliberate, like footsteps that were trying not to be heard. We rushed into the nearest classroom and shut the door behind us, turning off our lights again. No one spoke. You could hear our breathing, uneven and tense, and the rain hammering against the windows. After a few seconds, the door slowly creaked open. At first, it looked like no one was there. Then a shape appeared at the edge of the doorway. Just a head, barely visible in the darkness, angled in a way that suggested it was watching us. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It just stayed there. One of my friends tried to talk, asking if everything was okay, if the person worked there, but there was no response. The silence was unbearable, stretching on until it felt like something was about to snap. We didn't wait any longer. Marcus forced open a window, and we climbed out one by one. I was the last to go, and before I slipped out, I looked back. The figure hadn't moved. It was still standing there watching. We ran to the car and drove away without saying a word. None of us ever went back, and even now, years later, we still don't know who that was or why they were there. Story 3. When I started college, I didn't expect that one of the most unsettling experiences of my life would come from someone sitting right next to me in class. It started in a way that felt completely normal. I was struggling in a chemistry course, and the guy next to me, Ethan, noticed. He was quiet, a little awkward, but clearly intelligent, and he offered to help. At first, it was just small things. He would explain problems, show me different ways to approach the material, and occasionally check my work. Over time, though, his involvement increased. He started offering to look over my assignments before I submitted them, then gradually began doing more and more of the work himself. I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't stop him. We exchanged numbers so he could send me notes and answers, and our communication stayed focused on class. He never flirted or said anything inappropriate, so I never saw him as a threat. If anything, I saw him as someone who was helping me get through a difficult course. That's why what happened later caught me completely off guard. On the last day of the semester, after class ended, he asked if I wanted to go out with him. It was so unexpected that I didn't know how to respond at first. I wasn't interested in him in that way, but I also felt guilty because of how much he had helped me. So instead of being honest, I lied. I told him I was leaving town for a couple of weeks and wouldn't be around. I thought that would create enough distance for things to fade naturally. He asked about when I'd be back, and I gave a vague answer, hoping that would be the end of it. It wasn't. He started texting more frequently, asking questions that felt increasingly personal. At first it seemed harmless, but then the tone began to change. There was an edge to his messages, something that made me uncomfortable. One night, while I was out with friends, I received a message from him asking why I wasn't where I said I'd be. My stomach dropped immediately. I hadn't told him where I was going that night, and there was no reason he should have known I wasn't out of town. I looked around the room, suddenly feeling exposed, like I was being watched. I didn't see him, but that didn't make me feel any better. I tried to brush it off, but the feeling stayed with me. Later that night, I went home alone. It was late, and the streets were quiet. As soon as I stepped inside and locked the door behind me, there was a knock. It was after 1 a.m. I froze, standing there in silence, hoping I had imagined it. Then it came again. I asked who it was. His voice answered. He said he just wanted to talk. My heart started racing. I didn't open the door. I told him to leave, raising my voice so it sounded like someone else might be home. After a few seconds, the knocking stopped, but that wasn't the end. Later, he sent me a long message that made everything clear. It wasn't just disappointment, it was anger, entitlement, and something deeper that I couldn't ignore. He talked about how much he had done for me, how I owed him at least one chance, how he believed there had been something between us all along. Reading it made my skin crawl. That's when I realized how serious the situation had become. The next day, I went to the police and showed them everything. They told me they would try to contact him. He never responded. After that, he disappeared completely. No more messages, no more sightings, nothing. Like he had never existed. But even now, I still think about how it started. It didn't feel dangerous at the beginning. It didn't feel wrong. It felt like someone helping me when I needed it most. And that's exactly why I didn't see it coming.